Aslama, أنا Asma and you're listening to PM Conversations. This podcast is supposed to make you feel like you're having a good, much needed conversation with your favorite person after a long day. Whether you need to put your heart out or process your thoughts, if you think that this is what you need right now, grab your favorite mug, put in your favorite tea or coffee, and join me in today's topic. Bismillah. So, on the menu today, we have the Unlearn series. I was thinking that it would be better to divide this podcast into series according to topics so that things would be more organized. Topics or themes. And so far, I've already planned a couple of series. The first one, which is the Unlearn series, which here we are, and also the marriage series, because, excuse me, girls got a lot to say about that. With that being said, you are now listening to the Unlearn series, episode 1, Unlearn Perfectionism. And before we start, I need to make a disclaimer that this is from pure personal experience and just a little research. So do not take my words for science. I'm just sharing my story, hoping that someone could relate. And today, my story is about how I'm trying to make peace with my mental peace, perfectionism, and procrastination. Okay, so are you familiar with the game that goes like, put a finger down if? We're gonna play that. So hold your fingers up. Put a finger down if you've ever stared at a blank page for more than 10 minutes when you needed to write something, work on a project, write an essay, not knowing where to start. Put a finger down if you started working on something, then zoned out for infinity. Put a finger down if you were planning to do something for days and whenever the time comes, you just make up excuses. Put a finger down if you've been working on something and you've developed all these ideas in your head and they're like organized ideas, but the second you sit down and you're about to write, it's gone. It's like you're blocked. This one gets me every time. I mean, for me, it feels like I'm walking down a road following a map or instructions or whatever, and everything is okay, and I'm making progress. And once I get there, I'm like one step away from the door, and bam, the ground splits open. There is a huge rift, and I just stare, helpless and frozen. But I don't want to make this sound like a scary movie scene. The point is, what I'm trying to say is if you're like struggling with transmitting and transferring your ideas from your head onto paper, I feel like this is what I struggled with the most throughout my academic career. But let me tell you about this story that was back then miraculous for me, so that maybe it could help you, even though it did not help me much. I remember back in 2017 or 2018, I think, I was working on my thesis for my master's degree back then. And long story short, because I don't want to keep repeating the same descriptions, scary, horrific descriptions of helplessness and frustration. So I was stuck. And then this one friend did an extraordinary thing for me. We shared a Google document. We were on call. I was asked to just talk it out, voice my thoughts. I remember the questions like, tell me about it. What is this about? How would you want to explain it? And as I went on, and developed my ideas verbally, on the other end of the call, that friend was typing out my words for me. And I was watching them turning into lines, into paragraphs on the screen before me. And even though it didn't work, unfortunately, neither the thesis nor the friendship, that one moment is engraved in my heart forever. It was mind blowing. But hey, let's back up a little. I used to introduce myself as a professional procrastinator, but then I went a little hopeful and promoted myself to a recovering procrastinator. But then I procrastinated my recovery, which I guess makes me a relapsing procrastinator. So trust me, I know what I'm talking about. But before going any further, let me remind you that the title of this episode is Unlearn Perfectionism. And you might ask yourself, why hasn't she mentioned yet the word perfectionism, much compared to procrastination? There are two reasons for that. The first reason is I think I was just tricking my mind not putting procrastination in the title because A, for fear of procrastinating this, because I really struggle to talk about it online. Like, I can talk about it, but I struggle to actively make content about it. And B, I don't think, and that's my own modest opinion, I don't think that procrastination is something you unlearn, but rather something you unbe. Like it's not something you learn or acquire. It's along the way of your life, but rather something you develop. Obviously, it's a coping mechanism, but that's for another conversation. And the second reason is that perfectionism and procrastination are in an endless loop. So you need to understand one to unlearn the other. And that's what I'm trying to do. So let me give you one of the greatest definitions of perfectionism that I found online. This researcher said that perfectionism is when people set unrealistic higher standards on themselves and or others, and they are emotionally troubled by such unrealistic demands. I will repeat. Perfectionism is when people set unrealistic higher standards on themselves and or others, and they are emotionally troubled by such unrealistic demands. And this very cogent perception has got me even thinking deeper. Was I naturally, innately setting these unrealistic standards on myself, or was I programmed? Was my mind conditioned into setting these unrealistic expectations for me? You know, the environment, the community, parental pressure, and whatnot. And if I look back at my childhood, my early education years, I was a straight A student. I was the pride of the family, the one child everyone praised for her academic achievements. But at what cost? What if I never wanted to be that? What if little me just wanted to be loved and praised regardless of of what her school report said? What if little me did not want to be punished or shunned if she did not get a full mark when she was 7 or when she was 10 or when she was 17? But that's a conversation for braver times. Anyways, I'm no expert, but I can't shake off the possible connection between perfectionism and the way I grew up. Actually, I never thought of myself as a perfectionist. I mean, looking back, being clumsy and messy, I don't know, like the messy hair, messy room, messy school bag, looking very disorganized, always coloring outside of the line, not being good with anything artsy or like any handcraft activities. And all I could think of looking at my younger self is that she wasn't perfect, or even worse, she wasn't good enough. So I feel like what clouded my notion of perfectionism is the reasoning that um, it's what I would word as follows: I'm not good enough, therefore I cannot be perfect. It was only recently in life that I understood that my perception of myself as not being good enough stems from my perfectionism. And although I did the work, or at least I thought I did, of loving myself and accepting myself and seeing and treating myself as good enough and sometimes even too good for certain people and certain situations, I'm discovering now that I did not fix the tree from its roots. I was only treating the leaves. In other words, I did not fix the main problem. I did not try to unlearn my perfectionism, but rather I was doing the surface work, just altering the consequences. As a result, I could not or like overcome my procrastination. In fact, no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, and even though I thought I was good enough, my subconscious still doesn't believe it. I wonder what my therapist thinks of my psychological breakthrough right now. Like, I might as well end this episode right here. Mr. Hala closed the show for me. But on a serious note, this actually reminds me of something a very dear friend of mine used to say. You shouldn't use paracetamol or like any painkillers for a situation that requires chemo. And remember what I said earlier? Perfectionism and procrastination are in an endless interchangeable loop. They are interconnected. So I just feel like the online conversation about procrastination that has been going on, all the TED Talks and stuff, is very shallow. it doesn't go beyond surface level. You'll find TED Talks and YouTube videos and podcasts, even books telling you about how it's linked to stress, ADHD, depression. One online question actually I came across was like, is procrastination a mental illness? And the answer goes as follows. Although procrastination is not considered a mental health condition in and of itself, it is connected to mental health challenges. Several studies have linked procrastination to deep anxiety and low self esteem. So, no, procrastination is not a mental health problem or illness, but it's linked to many. Um, Furthermore, a couple of years ago, my therapist explained to me that procrastination is just another face to my anxiety or a coping mechanism. It's basically my psyche trying to protect me from the effects of a stressful situation or like the unpleasant feelings that might come with this task that I seem to be unable to handle. But again, at what cost? A very satisfying definition that I found online says that procrastination is a self defeating behavior pattern marked by short term benefits and long term costs. And to be honest, I'm tired of suffering the long term costs. And let me just say that procrastination is no joke. The costs are real, they are heavy, they are accessible, lost opportunities, even if one might argue that it was just not meant for me, not meant to be, but still wasted time, stress, anger, anxiety, physical health issues, lots and lots and lots and lots of crying, and just general dissatisfaction and displeasure with myself and my situation at certain points of my life. Which brings us back to me being a perfectionist. See, there goes the loop. And that is why all the techniques and the hacks and the methods presented in those TED Talks, self help books, even in the most famous ones and the bestsellers, and I'm not naming and I'm not names dropping, they didn't work for me, or at least not, they did not have a long lasting effect. Not the 2 minute task method, not the do it now, not the count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, activate your frontal lobe, whatever, not even the Pomodoro app. Because as it turns out, all of that was paracetamol and painkillers, and that did not fix my issue. On the same note, and let me slide into my conclusion, I feel that this is beyond science. Like, the mind is beyond science. I mean, yes, it did invent science, but it doesn't care. At least mine doesn't care. So if I tell my mind, or like if I tell my mind that you need to break down your complex tasks into smaller, achievable, easier tasks, it will just roll its hypothetical eyes on me. My mind, especially when my anxiety takes over control, does not listen to what science says. However, what it does listen to and care about, alhamdulillah, is what God says. And last time I checked, Allah did not say anything about us needing to be perfect. Allah is not asking us to be perfect. In fact, Allah is telling us that as human beings, we are not perfect. This life ain't perfect, and we are not required to achieve perfection. I think several weeks ago, it's probably months now. I don't know if I already mentioned this in the in the introductory episode, because little sneak, I do not go back to listen to my own content. I mean, it's like one time thing, make or break. But yeah, anyways, I had come across this Islamic content creator, and she mentioned that, I don't know, let me paraphrase it because I don't remember word for word, but she said something along the way that basically chasing perfection almost goes against the faith of Islam, because as Muslims, we should know better and believe we know, like, we should know and believe that perfection is a quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And consequently, there is no need to pressure yourself, torture yourself, waste your life waiting for the perfect circumstances and the perfect moment. You are not required to do anything perfectly. You're just required to do. Full stop. Well, from the Islamic perspective, you're required to do it with pure, honest intentions, mindfully, consciously of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just not perfectly. In a word, Islam does not focus on perfection because it is established that it is not for us, the human beings, the creations. We cannot achieve it. So it spares us the pain and the mental torture. It's just a bit unfortunate that me personally, I'm realizing this notion later in life. But one might also argue that it's better late than never and that we do have to forgive ourselves for what we did when we didn't know any better. May Allah forgive us all. On this note, I will end this episode, my dears. I hope you've enjoyed the ride, and I would like to thank you deeply for not giving up on me after I put AP the podcast on hold. I cannot wait for your feedback on this new project, so hit me up anywhere available. And I guess the most interactive I'll be is on Instagram at pmcthepodcast with Z instead of an S. P.S. I have procrastinated this particular episode for at least 3 years and a half. And it still feels so heavy making it. And even though, even right now, making it, this week, writing it, doing the research, making it, recording it, designing the logo and whatnot, I keep telling myself, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's good enough. Just do it. Just go ahead, publish it or whatever. But still, in my head, there are these voices meticulously criticizing every bit of the process. And I'm trying so hard to shut them down. But the point is, I just want to say, it's not something you could, break the task down into smaller, easier, achievable tasks. Write a to-do list and cross whatever so that you feel the sense of accomplishment. It's not the sense of accomplishment that I'm fighting against. It's much more complex and complicated than that. So I would really hope the neuroscientists and the speakers and the researchers and all the TED talkers would show more empathy to this whole topic. Anyways, at the end, I just want to say, you might find this episode missing a few details. I could have explained more, I could have expanded more, but I honestly didn't want to go through detailed graphic descriptions of the struggle and the pain. But in general, this has not been an easy topic to tackle, but I'm proud of this, and thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking through. Thank you for being there. And don't forget to tell me what you think. إلى هنا وتنتهي. You're listening to PM Conversations, episode 1 of the Unlearn series, Unlearn Perfectionism. في أمان الله. السلام عليكم.